Let's jump into this review and see what all this thing has going on. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to review the 2023 Road Glide Special in Prospect Gold with the black trim. Really quickly, before we jump into everything, I want to give a shout out to Indy Ridge. They make the boots that you guys see me wearing all the time. They are motorcycle riding boots. I cannot say enough good things about them. I've done a full review video. I'll put the link for that down in the description if you want to check them out. There's also a link down in the description if you want to pick up a pair. It'll save you a little bit of money and make me a little bit. So be sure and check out Indy Ridge. Now let's get to it. Let's jump into the 2023 Road Glide Special and see what all this thing has going on. So like I said, guys, this is the Prospect Gold colorway. I think this looks absolutely amazing, and in typical Harley guy fashion, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that it looks much better in the sun, but we got a little bit of sunlight coming in so you can kind of see the light flake that this bike has going on. However, for 2023, the Road Glide Special comes in 10 different colorways when you factor in the chrome and black trims. I'll throw those colors up on the screen now so you can check those out, and we'll jump into the review. So this motorcycle is pretty unchanged since about 2021, and even then there weren't a whole lot of changes. And I know that upset some people, but let's talk about that for a second. If Harley Davidson were to change this bike up every single year, make significant changes, there's a lot of money that goes into the development of those changes. They have to do a lot of testing. So these bikes would be even more expensive than they already are. And I get tons of comments of people saying that, hey, it's really hard for me to afford one of the new bikes. So if they were to make all those drastic changes, I think we would all be in that same situation and probably not be able to afford one of these. Now, this bike is mostly unchanged for good reason, because it's really, really good as it is. So we'll jump into this thing. I'll show you the features it's got. I'll kind of give my opinions on some of this stuff, and you can decide for yourself if this is the bike for you. So we'll start things off sitting on the bike, and the first thing I want to point out are these handlebars. I am not a fan of these bars whatsoever. I know a lot of people don't mind them, but for me, it feels like I'm driving a wheelbarrow, just the way that they kind of kick back this way and put my wrist in a weird angle. I know a lot of people are changing these bars anyway, but I thought it's worth pointing out. I would encourage you to go to your dealership if you're looking at one of these bikes, ride it and see for yourself. Just because changing the bars can drive up the price significantly, especially if you have the dealership do your labor. So just factor that into your decision. But nonetheless, we're sitting on the bike, so this is kind of what you see. We'll turn this thing on so everything is powered up and you can kind of see everything we're talking about. Now, if you're familiar with Harley controls, everything is still the same. I've gone over it in a lot of my reviews, so I'll spare you all the time of going over every single button, but I think with the labels, they're all pretty self-explanatory. Now, one thing on the Road Glide is this screen. So I'm 5'11", and you'll see that sitting straight up on this bike as you would be riding it, I'm a good distance away from the screen here. So to be able to reach it, I have to lean a good 4 to 5 inches to be able to touch all this stuff on the screen. However, that's not really an issue because you have your controls right here, and right here you can control everything on that radio without ever taking your hands off the bars. To me, that's the best way. But a lot of people, it bugs them that they can't touch the screen without leaning forward. So they're kind of going back and forth. So I wanted to point that out. Now you do still have your regular speedo here and your regular tachometer here. You also have a little bit of information in this window. So up top here, you have this little trip button. So you can cycle through trip A, trip B, how many miles till empty. your front tire pressure, rear tire pressure, and then back to your miles. You'll see we also have gauges up here for the fuel and your battery voltage. Now, as you've noticed, there are speakers in the front of this bike. I personally like the stock Harley speakers. Could they be better? Sure, but I've never had an issue. I've never needed to upgrade my Harley Davidson speakers, but a lot of people choose to do that. Also, you'll see here, you have these little cubbies, which is one feature I really like on the Road Glide. They're not massive, but they're enough to throw like your keys, your wallet, just all the stuff that you usually carry in your pocket that's just uncomfortable while you're riding is in there. You also have this USB plug here, so you can charge your phone through that, although it's not very fast charging. And you can connect your phone to the radio if you don't want to Bluetooth it for whatever reason. I would encourage Bluetooth. It's just an easier way to me. And we're not going to go into all the features of the radio, but you do have Apple CarPlay. Your navigation, which is going to run off of your phone, is up here. Change your music, take phone calls, etc. This screen is really, really nice to have. Now you still have your normal fork lock, so if you cut the bike off, you're here. If you want to lock this bike, you would just turn the wheels all the way this way, turn your fork lock, stick your key down in there, and your front end is locked in this turn position so that someone can't push your bike away. So you'll also see up here that you have this vent. Now this vent can be closed here. I'll play with it a little bit when we get this thing out in just a second to do the test ride. However, riding this bike a good bit in the past, I never really noticed that much of a difference closing it. And you also have these two vents down here. They used to close on older models. They don't close anymore. But again, in playing with those, past experience, I never really noticed a difference. So the big thing with the Road Glide, the thing that most people like is this fairing. And that's because it's a fixed fairing. As you can see, the wheel is turned and the fairing is still straight. That's because it's mounted to the frame and everything turns inside of it. Now, the benefits with that would be there's less weight on the handlebars when you're turning, and this is what Road Glide people will want to tell you. With the Street Glide, I think it's maybe like 15 extra pounds with that fairing that turns with the bars instead of being mounted to the frame. I personally do not notice a difference. If you do, then kudos to you. Maybe you're a better rider than me, I don't know, but it's just never made that big of a difference to me. The next thing will be how it handles the wind. And they say with the Batwing fairing, which we happen to have one sitting right over here, I can show you guys what I'm talking about. With this one being attached to the front end, when you turn, it turns. So what they're trying to say is when the wind hits this, it's moving you around like that. If you have little jello arms, then yeah, I guess maybe it does. I've put a ton of miles on Street Glides. I've owned one as well. Never had an issue with it moving me around. I mean, guys, if you pass, say, an 18-wheeler on the interstate doing 70, 75 miles an hour, you're going to have a little bit of wind move you regardless. And at the end of the day, we're on a motorcycle, so I don't think the point is to block all of the wind, not experience the wind. And I get that they're trying to say it just makes the bike more stable. I'm just saying in my experience, I haven't noticed that big of a difference in the Road Glide, but that's me. That's a very subjective thing. A lot of people say that they notice a difference. So I'm not saying I'm right, they're right. Now another thing with this fairing will be these headlights. So you do get two headlights. They put out a lot of light. They work really great. But the Street Glide crew is going to tell you, well, the problem with this is when the wheel is turned, the headlights don't turn. Whereas on the Street Glide, say you're making a turn or you're at a stop sign and you're doing a slow turn, you have the light to kind of follow. I've ridden Road Glides at night. I think the lighting is absolutely fine. It not turning with the bike. These things put out enough light where I can still see where I'm going. It has not been an issue for me. Now, you know, if you've watched any of my other reviews, we're still going to pick on Harley Davidson for no LED turn signals. Like I've said in some of the other reviews, unfortunately, I have to continue to point this out until it catches Harley Davidson's attention and they start putting LEDs on their motorcycles and the turn signals. Now your front end, you'll see with this being the big touring bike, you are going to get dual disc front brakes. I've talked about that a ton in the past. I've never had issues with the single disc, but on these bigger, heavier bikes, I really do think you need the dual disc So it's good that Harley puts them on there. Harley also does a great job on their brakes, guys. The one thing I wish Harley would do on their touring bikes is an inverted front end. So I rode Indian's version of the Road Glide. It had an inverted front end and it felt absolutely amazing. In my opinion, this suspension on these Harley Davidson models is just a little dated, and I would really, really like to see a change from them on that. So moving around to the other side of this bike, I'll point out this crash bar just because if you haven't been around Harleys for a while, you're probably used to that big, ugly one. This is a lot smaller, a lot more low profile. However, as far as I know, you cannot do the lowers. I know a lot of people want to put the lowers for either a little extra storage or to block the wind. I do not think you can do them with this engine guard. You have to change it back to that big square one that they used to put on these bikes. And again, if you've been out of the loop for a while, these bikes no longer come with hill shifters. Last year the CVO got them, but it was the only model. None of the rest of the touring bikes didn't get them. I know a lot of people like the hill shifter, so if that's something you're interested in, you can put one on there. It literally just has this little spacer right here. So you would take this off, pop the spacer out, then you can move this one in, put your hill shifter on that shaft, and be back to the hill shifter, but it's something that Harley Davidson is making you buy now. So speaking of foot controls, so for your passenger, you do have these passenger pegs, which are not cheesy. They're not, they're not bad. Honestly, could they look better? Yeah, but the fit and finish of them is pretty nice. So it was nice of Harley to do that. Your seat, same thing. So for your passenger, this is not terrible, but it does leave a little bit to be desired over longer rides. The driver's seat, same thing, could be a little bit better, but I've logged a ton of miles on these stock Harley seats, and they're honestly not that bad, so I do have to give Harley some credit for that, because the seat doesn't look terrible, and it also doesn't feel terrible out of the box. Would I change it? Yeah, but it's usable as it is right now. So on your saddlebags, they are still the one touch. Harley Davidson went to that in 2014. In my opinion, that's been one of their best upgrades, because some of you will remember you had the old metal style latch here that you kind of had to finagle with while messing with the lid itself. And now to get in the saddlebag, you literally just lift that up and you're inside this bag. These are locking bags. If you need to take them off to do anything, Harley Davidson makes it super easy. You just unscrew these. They're only doing one security fob now. I don't really know why, other than just it saves them a little bit of money. You still get 2 barrel keys, but you're only getting 1 fob now. Now this may just be me being nitpicky, but I've also noticed a lot of the saddlebags that I've opened up recently have a little bit of overspray, and I'm pretty sure you can get this off fairly easy. But I just wonder what was going on with Harley Davidson where they kind of looks like a little drop with quality control. Nothing huge, and I mean, again, it is in your saddlebag, nobody sees it, but I would like to have seen that, not be the case. And it'd be different if, it was just every once in a while, but I think every saddlebag I've opened on these 23 models has this exact same issue with the overspray. Getting back to your bags, they are lockable. You would take one of those barrel keys, put it in here, turn it, and then you are no longer able to lift this latch, keeping your stuff inside a lot more secure. Moving around to the back of the bike, a lot of people probably know this already, but on your special models, you do get the stretched bag, so it looks nice, got the cutout for the exhaust. Kind of has more of that swept look from the side profile. Now this is going to depend on your personal preference, because me personally, I like the non-stretch bags. I just think it looks a little better, and I also run a 2-in-1 exhaust on most bikes, so the left side would be cut out for no reason for me. Now for those that may be lost, I'll show you this Street Glide standard right here just to give you an idea. These are the non-stretch bags. That's how that looks from the back, and that's how it looks from the side. I just prefer that look personally. Now let's get to the power plant. This bike is running the Milwaukee 8 114 cubic inch engine. This thing's gonna put out roughly 100 horsepower and 118 foot-pounds of torque. Now the bike weighs right around 850 pounds after you put your gas, your oil, and all that stuff in it. So this 114 moves this thing down the road pretty good. It already comes with this air cleaner. We'll just take this sock off. The sock is just if you're riding in the rain, helps keep your air cleaner from sucking in too much water. Looks a lot better without it. I like that Harley has started doing these open air cleaners on this bike, because that means if you really want to open this thing up, all you have to do is put a full exhaust system and a tune. Then you have the full stage 1. It lets this thing breathe a little bit better, makes a little bit more power, and it feels like it makes more than it really does, but that's kind of the goal, is to feel the power. So that's been the Road Glide Special in a nutshell. I'll give you guys one more walk around before we get this thing out. I'll test ride it and kind of give you some feedback on how it feels to ride this motorcycle. Also, I realized I didn't point out the wheels. These are the same wheels they've been doing for a while, and I really like them. It's a thinner spoke. I feel like Harley has really stepped up their factory wheel game on most of their bikes, so I do have to give them some credit for that. Show you this windshield. It's pretty lay flat. There are a lot of windshield options for this thing. 4 screws take it off, so if you want to change your windshield, redirect the air, or give your bike a different look, they make it pretty easy to do so. Again, guys, this is the Prospect Gold colorway, and I think this is one of the better looking colors for 2023 on the Road Glide Special. Now, let's get this thing out and go have some fun. All right, guys, taking off on the Road Glide Special. Now, well, I don't know if this camera is as good as the others I use, but you'll be able to see a little bit of this tank in the sunlight, hopefully. Like I said, this color is just really, really good, the Prospect Gold. One thing that's not good, like I pointed out in the review, these bars aren't bad. Like, I could do, and I have done, you know, shorter trips on these things before. Like, I think I've gone to Augusta, so I mean, you're talking 200 miles in a day. And they worked for that, but just the ergonomics to me are just not there. But again, it's all personal preference on what you like. I just feel like I can control the bike a little better when my arms are a little more in front of me. But other than that, I was in a little bit of a rush. We also tend to do these test rides at the absolute worst time possible, so traffic is a nightmare. So I didn't bother getting my gloves out of my personal bike that unfortunately ends up staying at Tim's more than it stays at my house. But I just got off the Lowrider ST doing the test ride review on that one. And I will say it offered nothing in the way of wind protection for my hands. This one, I can definitely still feel the wind, but you can tell that fairing being much bigger and wider is blocking a good bit more off of my hands than the Lowrider ST did. Same thing when we take off, I'll kind of, you know, give you a feel for, show you where my hand's at and kind of tell you what I'm feeling as far as wind goes. I know that is a big thing people look for with these fairing bikes. So we'll kind of open this thing up a little bit. So like I said, the 114 moves this thing along really, really well. It just needs to be opened up a little bit. So as far as wind, I don't know how much of my hand you can see. I do feel a little bit of wind down here, but there's absolutely nothing until you get to about right here. And at that point, it's kicking it over my helmet exactly like you want it to do. We'll close that vent. You know what? I might be a liar when I said I didn't notice a difference. I was definitely a liar. So when I closed the vent, for me, it brought the wind down a little bit, and it's probably hitting my helmet a little bit more, which is definitely not what you want. It gives you a bobblehead the whole time you're riding. So I do like it with the vent open. Bike is super comfortable. You have floorboards, a forward position while you're riding, so your knees are a little bit more stretched out in front of you. Long distance, that does make a difference. So as much as I brag about liking mid controls, I do like a highway bar or something on those bikes to be able to throw my feet back up, just to stretch them out. Oh. Ooh, buddy. That's cool. Do whatever you need to do, I guess. Anyway, 6-speed transmission, which obviously with this review, no way we're going to stretch this thing out that much, but it is really nice to have that. Dude, like I said, this hour is gnarly. 6-speed transmission, really good.
Every once in a while, I'll get back on a bike with a 5-speed. So, for example, I rode Rocky's personal FXRP that he's built. That is a really, really nice bike, but 5-speed transmission, about 80, 85 miles an hour is all you got on that bike. But the RPMs are so high in that 5th gear that I constantly just was trying to shift, just to bring those RPMs down a little bit. And I'm a guy that typically rides with my RPMs pretty high. So 6-speed transmission is nice. As I mentioned, the seat is really good for a factory seat. I've never noticed any issues, but when you upgrade it, you'll notice how much better a seat could be. We'll open this thing up a little bit more again, since we have a little bit of real estate to do that. I mean, we're hitting bumps. This thing is pretty smooth. So I know I pointed out the suspension and said that, in my opinion, Harley is lacking. I do stand by that statement. However, I think that the suspension is not terrible, but it could always be a lot better. And the problem that motorcycle manufacturers have is they're trying to accommodate a very wide range of customer with one suspension. So you can adjust the rear, and I highly encourage you to do that based on your weight recommendations is what it's going to give you in the book to tell you how to set it, but also your riding style. If you want it a little stiffer, if you want it a little softer, kind of learn, what that feels like, so you'll know how you want it to be set up. But like I was saying, the discrepancy that Harley has to cover. So, I mean, I weigh roughly 220 pounds. What if you have a guy that, say, weighs 320 pounds, and then he's going to have a 215 pound passenger on the back? That's a lot more weight than just me. So they're kind of trying to cover all the bases with the suspension. And what ends up happening with stuff like that is if you try to make something for everybody, you end up kind of not making anything that's great for any one person. It works. And that's what this suspension does, in my opinion. It works. You know what? We're going to skip all this riffraff. We're going to put this baby on the interstate. So I'll be honest with you guys, I'm about done as far as the test ride goes. I'll leave this rolling just since we're going to be on the interstate, just to see if we get any good footage and kind of give you guys a feel for the interstate. Actually, I'm glad we left it rolling, because we can talk about that. Everybody says, oh, road glide more stable, whatever. Guys, I want to believe it. I want to buy the hype, but I just feel the same exact, it's the same feeling on this as I get on the Street Glide. I know, dude, I feel like I've name dropped a lot in this one, but I know Traveling Tall feels the same way. Granted, he does own a Street Glide right now, but I feel like he's unbiased and he tries to like the Road Glide as well and give it a chance, and it's not the thing. I worry that a lot of people, kind of like with iPhone and Android, people want you to like what they like, because then it confirms that they made a good purchase. And that's not a dog on the Road Glide in any way, or saying that it's worse than the Street Glide. That's definitely not the case. I just don't know if it's that much better than what everybody tries to say it is. I'm definitely glad we went this way, because I think we would still be sitting at that intersection waiting to get out right now. It's also good that this thing has some get up and go. You can accelerate into traffic, be comfortable, be confident. This thing also works good with the load, like we were talking about, with rider, passenger, and then you factor in all your luggage and stuff. This thing will get up and go with the load. But it's obviously much more spirited, if you will, when it's stripped down. It's just you, there's no luggage. And it does, if you're coming from non-fairing bikes, it does take some getting used to have all of this kind of up here, especially down here where you can't see anything like around the road near your front tire. Obviously, you should be looking ahead and you'll see stuff from there. But if you have to make any low-speed maneuvers or there's anything kind of right in front of you, it's just a little harder to see, and that takes some getting used to. But after you ride this bike a while, I don't think you'll really have a problem with it. All right, so we're getting close to the dealership, so I'll go ahead and do my YouTube spiel. Please like the video if you liked it, and please, please, please subscribe if you've watched a couple of my videos and you're into the channel, because I think something like 88% of the people that keep coming back to the channel are not subscribed. That would be a game changer if I could get most of you guys to subscribe. It really helps open up doors for me as far as working with other companies, which allows me to bring you guys more content. So if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.